Fortaleza, Brazil, 1999. The city shimmered under a late summer sun, the streets buzzing with motorbikes, chatter, and the faint echo of radios blasting samba. The Banco do Brasil branch on Avenida Santos Dumont stood like a quiet monolith amid the chaos. Thick walls, armed guards, and a vault said to be impenetrable. To the public, the bank was a fortress. To the right crew, it was a system waiting to be exploited. This was not the kind of heist that unfolded with gunfire or car chases. There were no alarms that night, no frantic police pursuit through narrow streets. When the sun rose on Monday morning, $5 million had vanished without a single sound. The robbery was so clean, so quiet, that investigators described it as a crime of absence. No forced entry. No broken locks. No witnesses. Just an empty space where the money used to be. Behind the stillness was a group of men who understood something most criminals never did. That the weakest point in any fortress isn't the wall, it's the person holding the key. Every legendary heist begins not with explosives, but with trust. In late 1998, a mid-level Banco do Brasil employee. Intelligent, ambitious, but frustrated with his stagnant position, became the target of careful grooming. He knew the bank inside out, alarm codes, guard routines, vault timing, and maintenance schedules. To colleagues, he was quiet and dependable. To outsiders, he was a potential golden ticket. One evening, at a dimly lit bar on the city's outskirts, he met a man who introduced himself as a consultant. In reality, he was the recruiter. Charming, calm, with the subtle menace of someone used to bending people to his will. "You know this place better than anyone," the recruiter said, stirring his drink. "And I know how to make that knowledge worth something." The employee hesitated at first. But months of casual conversations, subtle promises, and hints of financial escape wore him down. His loyalty cracked, not with a bang, but with a whisper. By January 1999, he had started leaking information, first about guard schedules, RM resets, and finally, the vault's layered security system. He wasn't joining a gang. He was becoming part of an operation. The crew wasn't reckless. They were planners. Former construction workers, small-time thieves, and one ex-security technician came together like puzzle pieces. In a small rented house in a quiet neighborhood, blueprints of the bank were pinned across walls. They studied shift changes like military analysts. They memorized the distance from the service entrance to the vault. They timed how long it took for guards to circle each floor. Their plan centered on one principle: minimal footprint. The perfect heist would leave investigators chasing ghosts. Friday nights were ideal. The vault would be stocked after a week of deposits. No one would touch it again until Monday morning. That gave the crew nearly 48 hours to vanish before anyone even realized what had happened. The inside man's job was to manipulate the alarm systems under the guise of routine maintenance. For weeks, he rehearsed tiny adjustments to alarm timing, seeing how long he could delay a sensor before anyone noticed. By the time of the heist, he could pause key circuits for minutes, long enough to let his accomplices slip in. "We move like smoke," the leader told them. "No noise. No traces." January 29, 1999. The bank closed its doors at 6 p.m. Guards made their rounds, lights were shut off one by one, and the city outside sank into its humid, buzzing night. At 10:30 p.m., 3 men emerged from a nondescript van parked a block away. Dressed like maintenance staff, they carried toolboxes and wore caps pulled low. Their inside man was already inside, blending with security personnel preparing for weekend procedures. In the control room, he initiated a brief system check. For exactly 7 minutes, a section of the alarm network was offline, logged as routine maintenance. It was all they needed. A side service entrance clicked open silently. No forced locks. No alarms. Inside, the men moved with surgical precision. One monitored the hallway. One carried the gear. The third focused on the vault's first lock, a code panel. The insider entered it without hesitation. Behind the panel was a second lock, mechanical. It wasn't brute-forced, it was picked, slowly and expertly. The sound of tumblers falling into place was the only noise in the building. When the heavy door swung open, it wasn't chaos waiting for them. It was neat stacks of cash, arranged like gold bars under fluorescent light. For 4 hours, the vault became a stage for the most disciplined performance of their lives. They packed the money into false bottom crates disguised as construction materials. One man stacked. One counted. One carried. No shouting. No rushed movements. Just the rhythm of their breathing and the soft sound of bills sliding into bags. They didn't take everything. That was deliberate. Emptying the vault would trigger immediate suspicion. Instead, they left just enough to make it look like a clerical error at first glance. By 3 a.m., they were gone. The door locked behind them. Alarms rearmed on schedule. Security logs showed nothing out of the ordinary. The van rolled out of the neighborhood under the cover of morning traffic. Inside, $5 million in cash sat beneath toolboxes and pipes, invisible to the world. Monday morning, January 31st, bank employees unlocked the vault as usual. At first, no one panicked. A few missing stacks weren't unheard of, accounting errors happened. But as they began tallying the ledgers, the numbers didn't just fail to add up, they screamed. $5 million were missing. Alarms were checked. Untouched. Locks were intact. Cameras revealed nothing unusual. The branch manager stared into the vault's empty space with disbelief. "This isn't possible," he muttered, but it was. Within hours, federal police were on site. The media caught wind, and headlines exploded across Brazil. $5 million disappears overnight, no alarms triggered, Banco do Brasil. Hit by ghost thieves. For the public, it was part fascination, part outrage. For investigators, it was a nightmare. The investigation was methodical, relentless, and increasingly desperate. Police scoured the branch inch by inch. Nothing. They reviewed security footage frame by frame. The looping camera feed during the exact window of the robbery was their first break. Next came the alarm logs. Investigators noticed a maintenance gap of precisely 7 minutes. It was scheduled, but unusual. Only one employee had authorized it. Interviews began. Pressure mounted. A few employees cracked under questioning. Small inconsistencies led to bigger ones. And eventually, the inside man's name surfaced. He didn't confess immediately. But bank records showed new unexplained expenditures. Wire transfers appeared. Witnesses placed him in meetings with suspicious figures. Over weeks, arrests followed. A portion of the money was recovered from safe houses and offshore accounts. But the mastermind slipped away, disappearing into Brazil's vast landscape. For weeks after the robbery, Fortaleza buzzed with rumors. The newspapers called it O Roubo Invisível, the invisible robbery. Investigators scrambled to follow every thread. But what made this case maddening was that there was so little to follow. There were no burnt getaway cars. No dramatic shootouts. No stash houses with obvious clues. The crew had melted into the city's daily rhythm, and by the time law enforcement pieced together what had happened, the trail had gone cold. The inside man cracked first, but only partially. He gave up names of accomplices who had already fled. He confirmed the operation was planned months in advance, but not who financed it or where the money went. He seemed more like a pawn who had stepped into a world bigger than he understood. The suspected mastermind was a man investigators described as calm, methodical, invisible. A few witnesses claimed to have seen him boarding a long-distance bus days after the heist, clean-shaven, sunglasses, a single duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Others swore he used fake documents to fly out of the country, disappearing into Europe's financial underbelly. One theory suggested that he laundered the money through small businesses across southern Brazil. Bakeries, car dealerships, nightclubs, effectively burying the cash beneath layers of legitimate transactions. Cinematic, that he lived quietly on Brazil's northeastern coast, investing the stolen fortune in property while watching investigators chase shadows for years. The truth was, nobody ever found him. And more importantly, millions of dollars were never recovered. The mastermind had simply stepped off the stage and vanished, leaving investigators staring at an empty vault and a puzzle with missing pieces. "We caught the players," one federal investigator later admitted. But the conductor of the orchestra? He disappeared with the final note. The 1999 Banco do Brasil heist didn't rely on explosions or high-speed chases. It relied on something far more dangerous: trust turned against itself. In the world of banking, walls, vaults, and alarms are meant to protect. But they're only as strong as the people who control them. In this case, one employee's betrayal and one mastermind's patience transformed a national financial institution into an unlocked door. Unlike many heists that end in spectacular arrests or gunfights, this one faded into quiet legend. It was talked about in whispers among investigators for years. New recruits studied the case as a cautionary tale. Not about force, but about infiltration. It wasn't just the money that disappeared. A retired officer reflected, it was the illusion that we were in control. Today, decades later, the Banco do Brasil Vanishing Act remains part solved, part unsolved. A handful of conspirators face justice. But the man who orchestrated it, and the bulk of the fortune, slipped into history's shadows. And perhaps that's what makes this heist linger. It isn't just about the theft. It's about the realization that the perfect crime doesn't always leave fingerprints. Sometimes, it just leaves questions. Questions without answers.